This is a 2B Forum special edition predicting the 2020 impending crisis, war in Korea. A summary by Dr. Choi Sung-hwan, MD, PhD, a psychiatrist of Republic of Korea, recorded in Seoul, 2020, July 19th. This is a meticulous summary on the crisis imminent to Korean Peninsula due to the aftermath of several international calamities and conflicts between the superpowers and the world epidemic disasters, which includes the decline of the popularity of U.S. President Donald Trump and the expulsion possibility of the communist Chinese leader Xi Jinping from power, and the postponement of the 2020 Tokyo Summer Olympic, and also the newly set format of the G7 Summit into a G11 Summit system, which is delayed till September this year. But the main factor, as a natural necessity being the running mad internal and external situation in North Korea, should not be excluded. In the chicken game between the United States and the Communist China, both will not collide against each other like insane lunatics. There will be any type of mutual agreement between the superpowers to relieve this unavoidable burst of the fragile perilous stability, which has been narrowly kept being maintained since now. So the chapters will be as follows. First, the introduction and the prediction made in 2019, and summary. A skirmish could begin anywhere, and the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, and the new G11 formation, and why Korea, and the tip for your activities if the war breaks out in Korea. Why will a war break out in Korean Peninsula in the year of 2020, especially in October, the 10th month of this year? In what ground and basis? Both North and South Korea is located in the Northeast Asian continent, which extends its territory to the Korean Peninsula and its annexed island, including Dokdo to East Sea. The East Sea. South Korea's capital uses the same timeline with Tokyo, Japan, and the closest current ally in the region is Japan alone, though a small amount of UN military advisors and US forces are aiding its defense. Unfortunately, Japan was a hostile country due to its expansionary imperialism, greediness in the early 1900s, and through these problems, Japan was a hostile country to Korea till 1965. South Korea started as a democratic liberal nation since 1948, and President Lee Seung-man and Park Chung-hee formed a solid base for South Korea's current development, and it became the most poor nation to one of the richest nations in the world, with only petty and trivial support and aid from the developed world. We call it the miracle of Hangang. While the Communist Korea formed in the northern part, receiving all-out preferential treatment from two super powerful nations consecutively, that is to say, from the USSR and currently the Communist China, remains the poorest nation in the world, whose only hope is to maintain its dictatorial regime from Kim Il-sung to Kim Jong-un through intimidating other nations with a suicidal atomic bomb and ICBMs. Going back to the topic of why will a war break out in the Korean Peninsula in the year of 2020, especially in October, the 10th month of this year, in what ground and basis is an utmost importance to shape the CCP virus-driven world's future appearance, the post-CCP virus era. I have previously predicted such sudden changes emerging in Korea, but dozens of variables and factors have been altered, and I need some more explanation for this. Firstly, the Chinese CCP Wuhan virus breakout, rampant, and the delay of the 2020 Tokyo Summer Olympic. Secondly, the additional popularity decrease of U.S. President Donald Trump after the George Floyd incident, and the probable massive instigation and violent demonstrations stirred up in the United States by Chinese communist-backed Antifa movements, reducing the possibility of President Trump's November 13th, 2020 re-election. Thirdly, the most important factor, which is the G11 Summit, a modified term of G7 Summit, which customarily hosted during May to July, dubiously delayed to September this year. September 2020 is a considerably symbolic meaning, and it has a meaning in it. Its timing, and maybe there will be no G20 summit at Saudi Arabia scheduled in December 1st this year. It symbolizes a coalition united force against China, an anti-communist Chinese regime coalition movement. First, I will explain to you about South Korea's situation after October, then move over to the international circumstances. These are the adverse influences that will affect South Korea. First, the disclosure of South Korean Moon Jae-in's pro-Chinese evil-doing and conducts will soon be verified in the September G11 meetings. Moon's willingly acceptance to the United States President Trump to the invitation of G11 arouses suspicions because South Korea was such subordinate enough to being dragged around by Xi Jinping in such trivial matters of deployment of THAAD missile system to Korea. So without Xi's permission, Moon could never participate in the September G11 summit. Xi blames about South Korea's THAAD missile, but never to the acceptance to participate in the G11 summit, which India and Russia were invited. but never the X's Communist China was invited to G11. What will be the President Moon's role, Korean President Moon's roles in the summit? Probably Moon will move exactly according to the previous made scenario, with the Z as representing and gathering important itinerary discussed in the summit on behalf of China. The South Korea will be included in a broad-based sanction which China is and will be invoked against. Secondly, brazen, impudent China, the People's Republic of China's continuous worldwide provocation in overall areas will absolutely bring about revengeful retaliations from the leading nations of the world, as Chinese communists even destroyed all the virus evidence and the blueprints they made. If they are artificially made and using it for only themselves and not opening to the public and the world, and they are trying to make money amid the global pandemic panic of this great pandemic by monopolizing the vaccine and medication productions, spreading the germs and monopolizing the health market. This is a calamity. Thirdly, there is no single nation that will totally ally to the Communist China, which only shows intolerable disgrace, and even the domestic situations of all against the Chinese Communist Party, including the Sansa Dam, the great flood, poor harvest results that will be exposed this year, and multiple social regulation imposed to the people, and that the people's repulsion is expected. Fourthly, the scary, terrible, horrifying event is the previously mentioned G11, which substituted the previous G7 summit meeting that is suspiciously postponed to September this year because of the worldwide pandemic and the infection fearing stupid world leaders are feeling of that? Not at all. It's not because of the pandemic. Let's look into this in a more logical fashion. G7 Summit always opened on May, June, and July. But this is delayed. Though it is expected to open in September, but the date is not fixed yet. The reason is not to wait until the Wuhan virus corona pandemic subsides. The term G7 is discarded now, and it is changed to G11 eventually. This implies the fact that the original G7 nations are waiting for the invitation, except from none other than the Russia. Yes, the Russia. The G7 countries are waiting for Russia to participate in the G8, G11 conference. The current G7 consists of United States and Japan, Germany, France, Canada, and Italy. And the first summit was held in 1975, France, while the Giscardin was in office. And when you had to add one more nation, that is Russia, the previous central nation of Soviet Union. What is strange is that they call it a G11, but the members are only 10, not 11. Let's look into this. United States, Japan, Germany, France, Canada, and Italy are the primary members, and it becomes G8 when Russia participates. In the G7, including Russia, makes it G8. And if India and South Korea, the Republic of Korea, enters, it becomes G10, not G11. I repeat, G10. Then what is G11? And what does G11 mean? Not to be confused, a notion of limited definition of G10 was used for a brief time. That is when Belgium, Netherlands, Sweden, and Swiss was sometimes included but this expression no longer exists. Now it is time to unravel a mystery. That is the G11. Though hard to understand, it is a prerequisite to understand and predict our immediate future. Till now, it looks like nothing serious will happen depending on where you live, where you stay. But this immediate future is just 2 to 3 months, 2 to 3 months ahead. This means that the change will be a tremendously sudden, abrupt, unexpected change. G11 minus G1 is G10. Then who is the remaining G11s? Why does the number 11 exist? This is for the Communist China. Whether invited or not, implies strongly that China is one of the 11 members, intentionally or not intentioned. This means that China is invited implicitly, but not declared invited by the Trump administration. What an unintelligible conception is this? Let's talk in English. Let's make it simple. This means that China is already invited, but to show up or not is their own business, but officially not. But what is the most important is the participation of Russia. No other nation. What we long for is which makes this G Summit the most great and meaningful ceremony of the 21st century is there to say the joining of Russia. Why Russia? Whether China show up or not, if Russia shows up and the G10 summit is completed, this means that an anti-communist China coalition, power force is organized and founded. Until now, Russia refuses to participate unless China is also invited. But as India and Russian alliance through favorability and mutual interest are agreeable, India possesses the ability to call in Russia despite its old-time intimacy between China and Russia, and India really means it. Now, this variable does not exist, and what these factors will finalize and determine the future. There are two worldly incidents that is most likely to happen. First, a regional limited warfare is inevitable. Second, the time of the occurrence of these incidents breakout will be postponed to October, the 10th month, not September, the 9th month. The author could not delay, but I could not delay predicting the outbreak of the Korean Peninsula conflict from September to October due to an unexpected appearance of dozen new variables. The results. First, a large-scale electric blackout will occur involving a considerably large residential district in South Korea or near South Korea's capital, Seoul. Second, the North Korea's general situations will be more than ever turn out to be unstable, and North Korea's condemnations towards the South Korea's Moon Jae-in, whether Moon continues his friendly effort or not, the attacks will be more and more explicit. Third, a shocking international economic incident will pop out. Fourth, an unique, unexpected, astonishing mutual announcement will be declared in September's G11 Summit. Fifth, the great powers will growl at each other, just like as the Third World War might happen any moment, but there will never be a large-scale collision. But an unavoidable regional limited warfare will happen. And surprisingly, this location shall be a place where the world order be reorganized and arrive at a agreement, rearrangement, then the corona pandemic-ridden international economy will return to life. The timeline. The author began this analysis and prediction since January 13th, and between October 24th in the year 2019. That is from last year to now, and from July 2020, current date today. In 2019, as the year following the year 2018, the analysis began on January. We call this a 기해년. Deutschland, German word like das elde Jahres, G11 is the year of the pig. The Asian traditional 60-year cycles, meaning the year of the pig, and 기해년, 기 means itself, and the 해 meaning the pig. But the 37th year in the 60-year cycle, which we call the system 60갑자, a 60갑자 cycle. The year 2020 is 경자년, and 60 간지, Jailclans, 37th Jailclus, German word in cycle, Jailclus, Jahre, German word for year, is. This year is not a year of the pig. This year is the metal rate year, which means the metal rat year. The metal rat, 경자, which implicates this year contains something cunning as a rat and sharp as a rat's tooth, made of metal, and that is an iron, and this is a sword or a saber or any kind of sharp, solid blade, eventually an iron weapon that would harm people. While in those early years in 2019, I decided to review the places where there might a regional conflict would happen for the sake of the great powers, especially China and USA, so to speak, a best place for a proxy war to happen and release some excessively compressed pressure that might lead to a horrifying next world war. For this, it would be a better choice for both Xi Jinping and Donald Trump to make it a regional proxy war than the World War III. And also the six-party talk members, including Russia and Japan. Not in 2020, but in 2019, the most core point for the prediction of the future element was the November 3rd, 2020 United States presidential election. And President Trump's popularity rating was sharply decreasing. Generally, United States has stirred up such foreign military disputes, such as a wars in Libya, Iraq, and Afghanistan, to earn the support from the hesitating ballots. And this is not deniable. Wag the dog, not wagging the tail. Wag the dog is a diplomatic, political, military mixture strategy of every superpowers, including China. Americans are apt to support the current president when a war occurred overseas. And so President Trump has such options to use. But success of the 2020 August Japan Tokyo Olympic was also important at that time to both United States and Japan. So Trump listily wanted not to disturb and make a successful hosting of the Olympics in Japan, and that the suitable time would be between the adjournment of the Olympics in September 6th and the beginning of the election of the campaign in November in the United States in 2020. Thus, the most appropriate timing would be September and October. And the most suitable sites at that time in 2019, I predicted the candidates were as follows. Orders are by likelihood. My list on January 13th, 2019. First, Lebanon. Second, South China Sea. Third, Venezuela. Fourth, Taiwan. 5, Korea. All the world powers will restrain to maximum point to avoid further argument of the physical collisions between them. First, I'll explain about Lebanon. The Invincible Israel Defense Force, the IDF, invaded Lebanon in the year 2006 and was totally swept out by the Hezbollah, a Shia Islamist extremist terrorist group. Not even a Lebanese regular army. Hezbollah was secretly backed by the Chinese government. This was a huge blow to Israel's self-esteem, and it seeks for total revenge, but possible only when President Trump is in power. Second, the South China Sea. Displaying power in the vast sea and combat in certain uninhabited scattered islands could be an ideal place to limit the damage of civilian lives and properties, but it can be used as a place to boast who is the boss here. And third, Venezuela. Most annoying nation near USA, a possible 21st century Cuba, which is sending waves of Maduro organized refugee parade to Mexican-American borders. Call that, what do you call that? The ways of refugee parades, which Russia and China have eyes on them. The caravan, yes, the caravan. But previous historic background of this area, gives priority to Colombia, Brazil, France, British, and the Netherlands, which were there as a Guinea, South American Guinea areas. For United States, it is as easy as invading Panama invasion, as they eliminated Manuel Noriega. Fourth, Taiwan is currently impossible. And as South Korea changed parts and betrayed the United States, Taiwan will become a formidable U.S. ally at all costs. Previous Communist Chinese leaders and Xi Jinping expected Taiwan invasion in 2020, but it will be postponed till 2027, the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the Chinese Liberation Army, the PLA, People's Republic Army, PLA. The Chinese lost its chance to occupy Taiwan and declare China's unification because Stalin had given them a non-rejectable coercive orders to go into Korean War in the late 1950s, and they failed the unification of China. Korea. The author will analyze meticulously about the Korean situation at the latter part of this video because it is important and crucial. Before referring to the Korean matter, let's discuss some more about the changes that were made and unavoidable factors that suddenly blocked and changed all the predictions in such a dramatic way. It is, as you all know, the emerge of the unprecedented breakout of the deadly worldwide pandemic matching the great plague of the 14th century, the pest, and the postponement of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which meant an economic collapse to both South Korea and Japan, though South Korea's Moon Jae-in will never admit to stand up for his master Xi Jinping. Timelines rescheduled since July 2020 till now is as follows. First, there will be no re-election of Trump unless a war breaks out anywhere, and anywhere is fine. Dozen of places are nominated, but some failed to be selected. Third, I'll explain why they failed. Third, Venezuela was the best and easy prey, but some imbecile dudes screwed it all up. But people gave it a name, though it had no value, to compare it to the Operation A Bay of Pigs, La Batalla de Giron, Cuba, in 1961. People gave them the name Operation Gideon, 2020. Now, no one pays attention to Venezuela. 4. Israel was burning with expectation for the retaliation of the perfect defeat by Hezbollah in Lebanon. But this is no more necessary. Lebanon collapsed itself due to moronic administrations and corruption, and its economy and public order is gone. Hezbollah's religious leaders are out of sight. We can see no more of them, and there is no one to blame there. Israel IDF force should not invade Lebanon because there is nothing to profit from it, but rather will have to play a role as a peacekeeping stabilizing force for the Lebanon citizens at the Israel's own expenses. Fifth, India and China border dispute. No bullets or bombs were exchanged, but 20 Indian and 40 Chinese soldiers died. India held a solemn memorial ceremony for their patriotic martyrs, but China blocked the news totally, and social media was blocked to their own people, and the youngsters and the soldiers of the PLA is unhappy about this. 6. India's Prime Minister Modi meets Tibet's spiritual leader Dalai Lama and promises to support Tibet's independent movement. And Dalai Lama says his successor may be found in India. 7. Japan government purchases several uninhabited islands south to the Kagoshima prefecture and is constructing unsinkable and aircraft carriers there, and the island named Makishima. Island Makishima is one of them. We can see the airstrips being in construction. The president of Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, suddenly severed off the ties between Philippines and China. They were naval training exercise till June 22nd of June 2020. June 22nd. But changed sides to U.S. Navy on 23rd June. U.S. and Philippines now promise to strengthen military alliance, and 10,000 U.S. troops are to be stationed in the Philippines. 9. In the summer of 2018, rumors that U.S. Marines will be deployed to Taiwan circulates. People deny this as false news on the basis that U.S. military presence in Taiwan will immediately trigger a nuclear war. But on June 17th, 2020, hundreds of M1 Abrams combat battle tanks and SAM missiles were sent to Taiwan, and maybe a certain number of military personnel are there right now training together. Just just a day after the North Korean regime blows up the Inter-Korean Liaison Office, Inter-Korean Liaison Office in Kaesong, Gongdang in Kaesong, U.S. Navy SEAL and U.S. Dispatch Unit drills in Japan, June 17th, 2020. 11th, 140,000 People's Republic of China Army, the PLA, is already waiting in the China and Northern Korean border to be urgently deployed into North Korea. Kim Jong-un might misunderstand this force is coming for his rescue, but it is not. China already had announced in December 12th, in 2017 that in preparation for mass North Korean refugees cross over to Chinese territory and began building 5 mega-sized concentration camps. At least 2 PLA Army Corps are stationed near the North Korea and China border, and many more paramilitant personnel, over a million, are already trained and standing by. 12. Poor Hong Kong. But the world gave up Hong Kong because abandoning it will further damage the mainland Chinese power. 13. In Xinjiang Uyghur area, Islamic State's Caliphate, ISIS, pledges attack on China. ISIS threatens China and vows to shed blood like rivers in March 2017. 14th, Australia insists in joining the forming Global Alliance Against China. May 16th, 2020. And Russia. How about Russia? 15th. Does Russia love China? In fact, it would love to give China a good beating. Is the news? Is it YouTube news? Does Russia love China? In fact, it would love to give China a good beating. June 15th, 2020. China is stealing Russia's defense and military industry secrets directly or by reverse engineering. This makes Vladimir Putin mad because it is the chief and main export items for the previous garrison military state, Russia. Furthermore, India, instead of China, is sending such love calls to Russia, and they will buy plentiful Russian-made weapons at the right price, including recently contracted transfer of about 33 newest model MiG MiG and Suoi fighting aircrafts. Though India turned to U.S. alliance during the non-alignment period at about 1950s, 60s, 70s, Indian forces were equipped with Soviet equipments, not United States. The Soviet equipments, though the military system was based on the old-time tradition British style. And the US is never asking India to buy US-made systems, but rather encouraging. Now they're encouraging to buy Russian-made weapons to improve the India's relation with Russia. It is recorded in July 3rd, 2020. 16th, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, all kinds of overseas Chinese elites dominating countries reject Chinese telecom companies. June 25th, 2020. To the United States people, to the Americans. 17th, Trump admits he is losing amid a mountain of bad polling and stark warnings from allies. The president has acknowledged his election woes to the allies. 2020, June 25th. Trump is shrinking. Here's the real danger if Donald Trump loses the 2020 election. News analysis by Chris Salesia, CNN editor. June 11th, 2020. What kind of danger will come if the Donald Trump loses this election? 18th. The military targets the allies, including Japan, Canada, Australia, and Britain, is aiming is to incapacitate. Chinese and Russian army will infiltrate through overland route. This has a special meaning. What I'm going to talk about from now on is about my nation, my country, the Korea. North and South Korea. Here's the news on April 24th, 2020. Behind the secret plan for North Korea collapse, nobody is really prepared for collapse of North Korea by Daniel Snyder, Asia Times. This Korea means North Korea, not the South Korea. The South Korea's economy and the world value and its infrastructures are over astonishing 40 times, 44 that of North Korea. And South Korea is an approximately seventh in its world economic status out of 193 United States members. Sacrificing South Korea is like self-destructive act for the world. But unfortunately, miserably, the North Korea is different. North Korea is composed of 20 million diligent and intelligent people. They possess the highest average intelligence quotient, IQ, in the world, even exceeding that of the Jewish population, researched by some world organizations. But they are brainwashed for over 70 years and became zombies. The ruling 2.5 million classes are evil as devils, and they feast their banquets through the bleeding of the humble lower classes. The ruling party is no more a communist. They gave up communism as a national ideology in the late 1990s. If you are doubtful about this, check the changes in the new constitution of North Korea. Current North Korea has no concepts, ideology, or philosophy, religion, or even they are artificially modified for the needs of the autocracy ruling class. Now, their God is the atomic bomb. Their God is the atomic bomb, the nuclear bomb. The nuclear bomb hoarding, dearest, highest, supreme comrade leader is the God. Who would want to be friends with this kind of unpredictable and unreliable neighbor? Now they are hoarding a nuclear bomb ready to throw into any direction. Even the Chinese communist friends are feeling the chill in the back of their heads. Besides, North Korea has the most excellent manpower and labor power in the entire world. You should have seen them work like hell. And as a bonus, they have the cheapest labor cost cost in the entire world compared to their abilities, which is cheaper than the people from any other world, that they will work without a murmur at a monthly pay of $100 to $200, 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. US and Japan and the Commonwealth allies will bomb and send frigates in the seas, and the lands and the cities will be taken in advance by the Chinese army, but the disarmament and denuclearization will be a joint task job between China, Soviet Union, United States, and Japan. While applying trusteeship operated by the United Nations, the trusteeship, the Allied forces will change its designation to a peacekeeping force, not the attacking forces. And the new North Korea will be a pro-China. The United States will let China influence North Korea, and West friendly, and denuclearization, a denuclearized nation led by Kim Jong-il, the Kim Jong-un's uncle. And to mention about the infrastructures and the real estate of North Korea, most of them, the housings, the buildings, and even the factories, excluding the factories for making nuclear bombs and weapons, everything is a show exhibition display which possesses no commercial or economic value at all. It means that even if the North Korea is destroyed totally to a zero ground level, it is going to do nobody harm, no economic harm to the whole world, unless the precious, ordinary common people of North Korea can be shared. The people can be shared and protected. They should not be harmed. Because we cannot call North Korea a normal nation. It should be destroyed and reconstructed totally by the main groups of the nations which have such stakes in the Korean Peninsula. Many foreigners may worry whether or not they should live in South Korea by October 2020. Okay, it is safe to live in Korea, South Korea. As it is, I will inform you what will happen and what to be careful if you are staying in South Korea at its height of the tensions. You may not leave Korea, or you can take a leave for just a few days to Japan or elsewhere, but never, do not, I repeat, do not go to China. Do not go to China. I got some more to include. Germany is preparing to increase its military strength to 400,000 from current 200,000 for preparing the future by changing the voluntary military system to conscription draft system, probably due to the withdrawal and reduction of 25,000 US troops from Germany. This is the news of August 27th, 2018. And US President Trump approves this plan. And official procedure begins. It began in 2020, July 1st. And US withdraws a Patriot missile system from Saudi Arabia. And it's 2019, May 8th. Saudi is still on war with Shia, Yemen, and Iranian troops. The withdrawal of US troops from South Korea and Japan is an economic bluff by Trump for demanding more contribution and devotion. But the withdrawal from the Middle East and European NATO, not NATO, NATO, is not a bluff, but a predicted plan to assemble and concentrate the United States forces to the Northeast Asia. The main base for them will be in Korea, South Korean Pyeongtaek, Osan, Korea, and Sasebo and Chitose in Japan. Well, let's look into the current 4x4 quarter of the year 2020. That is October, November, and December. If there is no hole made for the prolonged period condensed tension status to gush out, the whole balloon will explode. But the world powers will not want the balloon to rupture. They only want some for the present tension to be eliminated. By protruding a tiny hole and releasing slowly, the tension will be sufficient for the world to survive and strive again without rushing into a reckless collision and its catastrophic consequences, such as the Third World War and atomic war. By this, the world powers can relinquish and alleviate their angers in between them, and through the demolition and redevelopment and reconstruction of a certain area would be sufficient to overcome the economic and emotional Great Depressions if we share our wisdom together. But no matter how we rack our brains, a bloody sacrifice is inevitable. We need a sacrificial offering, a scapegoat. Unfortunately, one should be chosen. A chicken game between the two world leaders, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. You should remind that Xi Jinping is in a more dangerous situation and might lose power in the recent future than Trump. China's internal status is perilous. Both leaders are pushed into a corner, and they have nowhere to hide or to escape from the people's eye and to escape from the internal crisis. The only place is to go there, go here. Not to collide and fall into a brain vase instead of suffering a bloody nose. They cannot but cooperate with each other, no matter they hate each other. Why Korea? Because North Korea is the last remaining capitalist colony in 21st century. First, about the short-term harm in South Korea. First, this is the most dangerous part when the actual breakdown of the North Korean regime begins. There are almost 20,000 various artilleries targeted at various Korean facilities, and at least one cannon shell is loaded in each artillery. There will be no nuclear attacks. But some portions of the artilleries would be loaded with mass destructive chemical substance in their warheads, including biohazard substance, biological weapons, and by accident, they all may be triggered at once, but by manual way, not by a automatic way. Manually by the artillery unit soldiers who may misunderstand the situation, or by any kind of mistake or mishandling, or faulty orders might be made, delivered to launch and fire. So this is the most dangerous period that you will experience, but the length of time will last a day and 48 hours at most. 2 days. Estimated casualties at most are around 900,000. 900,000. You may be included in that or not. Second, the North Koreans not knowing, the North Korean people not knowing what happened to their country because the government never gives them the correct news, correct situations to the public, and they cannot access internet, so they do not know what's happening outside. Will panic and unrest and agitation will drive the residents to leave their home and try a frantic border escape. About 2 million is expected to come to South Korea, come down. Another 2 million to China, and 1 million to Russia. And some will try to sea route through the sea to South and also Japan. Third, South Korea also had a contingency plan. South Korea had a plan, contingency plan named 5029. Contingency plan 5029. But the South Korean politicians and leaders avoided not to carry out this plan, and not even to set up this plan, make this plan, because the North Korean dearest comrade might get mad at this plan, which concludes and predicates the North Korean sudden collapse. But fortunately, China and Russia and Japan had already prepared such plan in advance, or over about 10 years of time before, and now they are preparing for more details. And unfortunately, South Korea is unprepared. They have prepared nothing at all. So millions of young and old men and women, common people and militias, all kinds of North Korean people will pour into the northern areas of South Korea, including Pocheon, Uijeongbu, Paju, Wonju parts, and even to the extent of Ilsan area and other parts which are located at the northern bank of the great river dividing Seoul, which means the Hangang, northern bank of Hangang, because the preparation had not been done in advance. On-the-spot emergency countermeasures, ad hoc countermeasures, will show little effect and tremendous confusion and a grand amount of money. It is a more than 4 years job, even at peacetime. You can just catch a glimpse of what chaos happened in Italy and Poland, Germany, Sweden, Britain, and mainly in France, when just tens of thousands of refugees landed in Europe. Thus, various collisions and conflicts will happen, and especially the public order may be disabled. 4. The South Korean army will never cross the border. Not a single military man. So you do not have to worry to go to a war in the north if you are a Korean citizen, or you are in a Korean army, or you are expecting to go to the Korean army and you're called by the nation. You don't have to worry, because you're not going to do the war in the North Korea. ROK army is excluded, so don't worry. The United States President Trump does not trust Koreans, and Korea has no authority to claim any rights in the North. No Korean army will go to the North Korea. But what is a pity is that Korean companies and firms will not be permitted due to the lack of the previous contribution and for the penalty for disturbing these operations and the six-party talks previously for the nuclearization of the North Korean atomic bomb. Trump said, Koreans are terrible people, and I hate facing each other with Moon Jae-in. 16th of July, 2020. News, posting, contribution, Washington Post. Second is about the long-term harm in South Korea. First, capital outflow. Capital, the money outflow from South Korea to North due to Western development and low wage of North Korea. As I told you, the North Korea is the last probable and the best low wage and the best workers in the world of 20 million left in this continent, this whole world. So the capital will flow to North Korea. Second, the transmigration of foreign capitals and factories and companies and firms which were in Korea and in the vicinity of South Korea will all go to North Korea and flourishing North Korea. Third, being deprived of the function as a Northeastern Asian hub, Seoul will lose its advantage to North Korea's newly developing Pyongyang by China, Russia, Japan, United States, and its allies. Lastly, the South Korea will fall in deflation. It's almost certain, isn't it? Following the South Korea's depression, and dissatisfactions by the people, and the riots with political and economic instability, South Korea might go back to the times when their personal GDP was around 5,000 to 10,000. Now the Korean personal GDP is over 30,000, but it will fall to about 10,000, I expect. Thank you for this long summary. This was not a summary, but this is an important prediction, and it would not happen. It would not happen, but you should keep this in mind. And I believe this will be helpful to you and also to me. And I am very, very obliged and thankful to send this message to you all in English and to the whole world as a Korean doctor, as a Korean citizen, and a Korean patriot. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.